Illinois. Today is October 26, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Stolberg. Councilwoman Stone. Here. Councilman Kaufman.
Here.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Here.
Councilman Noble.
Here.
Councilman Hallman.
Here.
Mayor Rotary.
Here. Let us join together for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I want to wish Councilman Halleman a very happy birthday. Thank you for joining us.
Happy birthday.
Big day.
Yeah, where I'd rather be. Thank you.
We send our best wishes to Councilman Stolberg for a speedy recovery. We will miss him today. May I have a motion? Yes, go ahead.
May I just report that we are meeting virtually in accordance with the Illinois Open Meetings Act. All precautions and requirements have been taken by the city. The city hall is open. The city manager is present at City Hall in the event that somebody wants to observe the meeting from City Hall, and arrangements have been made to hear from the public in accordance with the rules that have been specified.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. Yes,
Mayor, someone from the public in the council chambers.
I beg your pardon?
There is someone from the public in the council chambers.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you. Okay, continuing on with our agenda, I'm seeking approval of the minutes of the special city council meeting held October 13th, 2020.
So moved. Second.
Will the clerk please call that vote?
Councilwoman Stone.
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman.
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilman Noble.
Aye.
Councilman Hallman.
Aye.
Mayor Rotary.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays, and the minutes are approved. I am seeking approval of the warrant list.
So moved. Second.
Any comments or questions on the warrant list? Hearing none, will the clerk please call that vote?
Councilwoman Stone.
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman.
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilman Noble.
Aye.
Councilman Hallman.
Aye.
Mayor Rotary.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays, and the warrant list is approved. We'll continue on to the report of the mayor. I have no appointments this evening. I have no proclamations this evening. In terms of other business, let's talk about this pandemic. On Friday, I sent out remarks related to this ongoing pandemic, and tonight I will be repeating those notes. Since the beginning of the pandemic in March, we've worked together as a community to save lives. Predicated on the advice of the CDC, the Illinois Department of Public Health, and the Lake County Health Department, we were one of the first cities in Illinois to declare a state of emergency and to require residents and visitors to wear a mask or face covering in public places. The city continues to enforce those restrictions and other relevant restrictions on businesses and on gatherings to the extent possible and necessary. Unfortunately, despite sacrifices made by all of us for many months, our work is not done as we regularly reevaluate mitigation efforts to stop the continued spread of COVID-19. City officials continue to coordinate with Governor Pritzker's office, Lake County, sister governments, and partner organizations. These efforts have been and continue to be challenging, but we support decisions endeavoring to reduce the load on our healthcare system, protecting our most vulnerable neighbors, and hopefully slowing the spread of infection. Now is not the time to get complacent, and I know everybody has pandemic fatigue. Everybody's frustrated. Everybody's missing special events, special occasions, celebrations. Unfortunately, this thing isn't over yet, and we need to continue to be vigilant. This extreme challenge to our public's health cannot end soon enough, and in the meantime, we will continue to work collaboratively to protect our community. You know what to do. Wear a mask. Watch your distance. Wash your hands. And having gatherings inside our homes is what's leading to a lot of these spikes in cases. We just need to be vigilant. Even if you know folks, even if you love them, they may be carriers and you need to be aware of that. As always, we owe our gratitude to those working on the front lines, our public safety personnel, grocery store workers, doctors, nurses, delivery people. Please keep them in mind as you make your decisions about going about your daily life. And with that said, I don't need to tell everybody, but Halloween is this coming Saturday. As a reminder, the city of Highland Park is not encouraging families to trick or treat this year. If you still choose to participate, please only trick or treat between the hours of 3 and 7 p.m. on Saturday, and please respect the wishes of those who are not participating. And of course, no shaming regardless of your choice. I think everybody knows the CDC has designated traditional trick-or-treating as a high-risk activity. And if you still choose to participate, please carefully review the CDC, IDPH, and city guidelines available at cityhpil.com/Halloween. Please only trick-or-treat at participating homes. And if you do decide to welcome trick-or-treaters, please turn on your outside lights and be sure to post the city's trick-or-treating flyer in a window or other visible location. That flyer is again available at cityhpil.com/Halloween. Halloween is a good reminder for us all that each household has its own comfort level with public activities during this pandemic. And while it's important to respect each other's decisions to participate or not, it is absolutely critical that participants follow the COVID safety precautions to avoid the spread of illness in our community. One last reminder, now that early voting has started, I'd like to share my appreciation for the hard work of the Lake County Clerk's Office in managing the unprecedented volume of mail-in and in-person voting during the pandemic. I was able to see firsthand the enthusiasm surrounding this election on the first day of early voting at the Highland Park Country Club, and I encourage everyone who chooses to vote in person to do so safely. Wear a face covering, maintain social distancing, and follow all directions from election officials. If you prefer to vote by mail, please remember that the deadline for receipt of your application is this upcoming Thursday, October 29th. Early voting continues at the Highland Park Country Club through Sunday, November 1st. Any questions should be directed to the Lake County Clerk's Office at 847-377-VOTE. And then lastly, I just want to remind everybody that this holiday season, small businesses need our patronage more than ever. And I'd like to invite you to join me in showing your support by shopping and dining locally. By concentrating your holiday shopping and dining in Highland Park businesses and restaurants, you'll be investing in our community, ensuring that our business community will continue to enrich our city for years to come. Please remember to practice social distancing, wear face coverings when you are going to any business or restaurant. And that is it for the report of the mayor. Continuing on with our agenda, our next item is business from the public. City Manager Newkirk, I know we've received several comments from the public.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we've received 5 emails. So the first one is from Bennett Lasco to the City of Highland Park, Mayor Rotary, and the City Council. I received a written notice recently of a proposal to prohibit parking on both sides of the street on Linden Avenue from Sheridan Road north to the bridge to the north of Sheridan Road. The notice states that the proposal will be considered by the City Council on Monday, October 26th. I write to oppose this proposal. I do not know the residents who requested the proposed parking ban. I live at 1459 Linden Avenue, 2 or 3 doors south of Sheridan, depending on how you count them. I oppose the request because I believe that prohibiting parking on the north side of Sheridan Road will shift that parking burden to my block on the south side of Sheridan Road. Parking already is prohibited on Sheridan Road itself. Thus, my block would become the only place for those vehicles to go. Like the applicants, I also would prefer to have fewer vehicles parking in front of my property. I expect most HP residents feel the same way. It never occurred to me to ask the city to adopt a parking ban that would force the parking burden onto someone else. I think it's a bad idea and would set a bad precedent. The notice states that, quote, there have been several close calls with oncoming vehicles and bicyclists, unquote. I'm sure this is a common complaint in many, many areas of the city. I know there's a problem with vehicles and bicyclists that turn too fast from westbound Sheridan Road to northbound Linden Avenue, but a parking ban is likely to make that problem worse rather than better. As a general rule, parked cars in the roadway will cause oncoming drivers to slow down. A wide open road will not. Lastly, I'm concerned that the city has received majority support from the residents of the impacted area and that the Traffic Management Committee supports the request. I consider myself a resident of the impacted area, but I did not receive any prior notice or opportunity to express my opinion before it was approved by the TMC. I respectfully request that the City Council reject this proposed parking prohibition. It would be helpful in any way. I will attend the City Council meeting on October 26th and state my comments there. Please let me know if you wish me to do so. The second email is from Brian and Heidi Janichki. They write, members of the Traffic Management Committee. In April, we contacted Sergeant Sean Kern regarding the dangerous conditions at the Linden Ravine intersection, a school bus stop, and excessive speeding along 1500 Linden. As discussed, the skewed intersection coupled with the increasingly aggressive driving behavior of fellow Highland Parkers are at fault. Failure to yield, excessive speed, and running stop signs. Increased enforcement was to be forthcoming, parentheses, pandemic given priority. The TMC parking ban as proposed will exacerbate the problematic conditions previously mentioned to Sergeant Curran, already existing at our driveway. Located just north of the bridge on the east side of Linden, our driveway has the added encumbrance of being below grade, creating sight lines more challenging than for those at grade south of the bridge. Vehicles parked north on our driveway block our view of traffic and cyclists approaching from the north, which have been running the ravine stop sign with greater frequency. That location cannot safely handle an increased parking burden from the south end of the block. Therefore, we feel very strongly that any parking ban in the 1500 block of Linden must include the eastern span north of the bridge. Otherwise, the TMC will be creating a dangerous but avoidable situation. Next email is from Robert Berger. I am writing in response to a letter dated October 9th, 2020 that I received yesterday from the city's Public Works Department related to the matter described in the above subject line. This is also pertaining to the parking consideration on Linden. I reside around the corner from the location that is the subject of the proposal that will be considered by the HP City Council. I drive in that portion of Linden Avenue several times a day in both directions, northbound and southbound. I am familiar with the situation relating to vehicles being parked in the area under consideration. I agree that vehicles parked on the east side of Linden Avenue in the described area could constitute a safety concern. This is because vehicles traveling westbound on Sheridan Road and turning right northbound from Sheridan onto Linden may not see vehicles parked on the east side of Linden, at least if those vehicles are parked in the 20 to 30 foot immediately north of Sheridan Road, early enough to avoid colliding into those parked vehicles, particularly if the moving vehicle is moving at too rapid a speed. Therefore, it might make sense to prohibit parking on the east side of Linden in the area described in the proposal, or at least the 20 to 30 feet immediately north of Sheridan Road. However, I firmly believe that vehicles parked on the west side of Linden in this area do not create any particular danger. Such vehicles are clearly visible to vehicles that enter Linden from Sheridan Road, whether they turn north onto Linden from Sheridan, coming from the east or west directions on Sheridan, or they are entering that portion of Linden from the portion of Linden south of Sheridan. Therefore, I recommend that you not prohibit parking on the west side of Linden. The next email is from Leslie Abelson. She writes, I believe that I am the only dissenting affected resident for this proposal. I do strongly agree that there is a serious safety concern with legally parked vehicles parking near the corner, creating a sightline obstruction for cars turning onto 1500 block Linden Avenue from Sheridan Road. However, this does not warrant the banning of parking on both sides of the street, which is approximately 27 feet wide curb to curb. The 1600 block of Linden Avenue, which is only approximately 17 feet wide curb to curb, has parking restricted to one side only, not both. I did not observe any parking restriction signs in the 1400 block of Linden Avenue, which is approximately 23 feet wide curb to curb. The only parking problem in the 1500 block of Linden Avenue is vehicle parking near the corner at Sheridan Road. This is a defined problem and can be addressed without the banning of parking on both sides of the street. I strongly suggest that we move forward with the most conservative approach by making adjustments only to the parking near the corner. And then the last email is from Phil Kaplan and Marcia Bogolub. They write, "We have lived for 26 years off of Sheridan. I won't give their specific address, next to the corner house at Linden. Parking is not allowed on Sheridan Road. When we have guests, like when our son and his car stayed with us for 3 months this summer, we park on Linden as there is no other choice. I also have a compact pickup truck that I use for charitable work that I park on Linden when there is no space in my garage or I need to leave my 1-lane driveway clear. This proposed parking ban really impacts neighbors on Sheridan Road, yet we did not get a, quote, vote on this proposed parking ban, even though we are, quote, residents of the impacted area. The process was flawed in not polling nearby neighbors on Sheridan to get the majority approval up front, and the solution is an overreach when a simpler solution of keeping cars parked a reasonable distance from the intersection would suffice. This plan would require us to park on the other side of the ravine toward Ravine Avenue, which is an infringement on our rights to have parking close to our home when needed. Linden Avenue on the other side, southwest of Sheridan, is a few feet narrower than the section of the proposed parking ban, so it presents its own set of potential issues. I know there have been accidents at the intersection of Sheridan and Linden. Is the best solution a total ban on parking on Linden all the way past the Ravine Bridge? There is currently a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign about 100 feet from the intersection. If there was one sign for, quote, no parking here to corner, that could address the perceived issue of, quote, sightline obstructions impacted by parked vehicles. The real issue at the corner is the, quote, skewed intersection, not cars parked on the east side of Linden well away from the intersection. I request that the members of the City Council reject the STAR's parking prohibition request and give this issue back to the Traffic Management Committee to develop a more effective solution to mitigate the safety concerns at Linden and Sheridan. The process of finding a solution was faulty as, quote, impacted neighbors did not get a vote up front, and the proposed solution is an over-infringement of Sheridan Road neighbors' parking needs. Thank you for your consideration of this matter. And then, Mayor, I know there are several residents here with us this evening that are also interested in this agenda item, which is 4 on the omnibus agenda.
Thank you. And do we know if our attendee at City Hall also wanted to be heard on anything this evening?
She is present for this agenda item number 4.
So I think what we should do is pull 4 out of the omnibus and have that conversation. So with that said, we will circle back to the comments from the public on this item and any forthcoming by my requesting a motion to approve items 1 through 3 and 5 through 7. I'm going to pull number 8 and item 9. So that's items 1 through 9, but I'm pulling 4 and 8. I'm seeking that motion.
What does that mean?
This is the.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, or 9? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilwoman Stone,
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg, Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Hallman,
Aye.
Mayor Rotary.
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays. Items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 9 have been approved by that vote. We will now discuss item 4, adoption of a resolution prohibiting parking on Linden Avenue between Sheridan Road and the bridge north of Sheridan Road, as supported by the Traffic Management Committee. So I know we just heard several comments from the public. I would love to hear from the council, and then if there are any follow-up comments from the public, we'll go in that order, asking that they keep their comments to 2 or fewer minutes. So at the moment, I'm opening it up, and also I can see staff is joining us as well. So comments from staff, comments from the council, questions, concerns. Who wants to go first? Anybody? Councilman Noble and then Councilman Bloomberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I am not supportive of the recommendation. I appreciate that the neighbors the plight of all sides. This, to me, the way it reads, the way it sounds, I've been over there. I've been over there multiple times. I have friends who live in the area. I drove over there in the last few days. This is a matter of a neighbor could be more neighborly about where they are parking, or a set of neighbors could be more neighborly about where they are parking. And it sounds like that particular neighbor may understand that they've created a situation that this is not something where we should be going around and putting in restrictions on every street. I mean, if we did, we could say we live in a homeowners association, and we don't. We live in a city. When you ask for these things, I think we have a little bit of a flawed process that we need to look at, because this exact same thing is happening right now over on the west side of Highland Park. We've seen this play out over and over again. So I would ask that the neighbors try to work with themselves to try to come to a resolution, and the particular neighbor where this is coming from, try to be a little bit more neighborly in a really difficult time where everybody is a little bit on edge. I feel badly that we're spending council's time and staff time on something like this. So I'm not supportive of this. I would like to see it be resolved between the neighbors versus us putting in more regulations.
Thank you. Bloomberg, then Holloman, then Kaufman.
Thank you. I think that was really well said, Councilman Noble. I agree with all of that. Generally, the policy in Highland Park on public streets is to allow parking. I didn't feel there was a compelling issue here other than the particular annoyance that Councilman Noble referenced, and I think that person is aware and would like to have the opportunity to correct that. I am a little concerned about the process in which many neighbors who clearly would be impacted by this were not contacted at the time that this matter was first discussed by the committee, and was sort of presented to the city council as a fait accompli. So I appreciate the chance to hear everything, but it also sounds to me like a ban on parking is unnecessary. There may be some issues at the intersection itself that should be addressed, and everything else really should be worked out directly between the neighbors. So like Councilman Noble, I would not be supportive of this.
Thank you. Councilman Holloman, and then Kaufman, then Stone.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And also that this is an area in general that there are plenty, you should be able to park on the street. If you want to go to the beach or walk somewhere in this area, like there's nowhere to park. So I am 100% opposed to any additional parking bans in the area. I would suggest just voting on this tonight, just so we can vote it down and be done with it. I don't want to see this go back to a committee or engage in another protracted discussion. Like I would like to be finished with this. I think it's already taken considerable staff time and energy, and is not a good use of that time.
Councilman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with largely agree with all the comments. I too am not in favor of this. I think it does sound like more like a neighborhood or neighbor kind of dispute that is not really, doesn't need to be addressed by a safety and parking restriction. If it were a safety issue, the restriction seems to be very overbroad for the problem that's trying to be addressed. And so I think it would set a bad precedent. And I too agree we need to kind of revisit the policy and the process behind this, but I'm hoping this can be worked out among the neighbors.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stone.
Thanks. At the risk of echoing what's already been said, we recently reviewed the policy regarding sidewalks. I think we need to review this policy as well regarding parking restrictions, because of the issues with the process that we've heard from several people tonight who were not notified, who live in the immediate area, who would be impacted. So I think we need to look at how we make these decisions at the committee level before they get to the council.
Thank you. So I just want to add my 2 cents. And I think many of you know that I come to this council via a stop sign request. So I just want us to recognize and acknowledge that there are nuances to neighborhoods that don't necessarily meet warrant requirements, that don't necessarily on their face have an impact. I know personally from taking that northbound turn that with frequency, I've almost rear-ended a vehicle parked there that has been parked there with regularity. So to that end, I do hope that those neighbors are able to work that question out. That is a way that people from the southeast quadrant of town go uptown. It's a more of a through street than it's probably built to be. And so I think we need to recognize the reality of the use and the volume of the traffic. And I do think we need some sort of stability at that intersection. It's very difficult to take the left onto Sheridan if you're southbound on Linden based on the sight lines. So I agree that maybe this is a bit of an overbroad response, a bit of a bulldozer for a smaller issue that can be resolved between neighbors. But I am curious to know if whether police or public works has once again visited those sight lines and has any recommendation in terms of diminishing parking to the corner by so many feet. That may be a compromise that at least gets us to the point of improving the safety at that intersection. So I'm seeking direction either from Public Works or from police, and then following that part of the conversation, we'll go to public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that Sergeant Curran is also on this line. No, yeah, when traffic management committee looked at it, right, we always take the request that comes from the residents, but we also look at it from public safety perspective in terms of the sight lines. So the comment shared to us by the residents, that does entail that there was some kind of a public safety issue, and that's one of the reasons why we went with our process of asking the impacted residents. Now, having said that, we have done in the past, the city code does require that between the 30 feet of the stop sign, there should be no parking. So that is already in our code that within 30 feet of the stop sign, there should be no parking. But as you said, in this particular intersection, because the skewed, the westbound Sheridan going to northbound, and there's no stop sign there because it's in opposite direction. So people are parking close to the intersection. And that's one of the primary concerns of the neighbor who brought up, because they have their driveways. When they are exiting their driveways, if the cars are parked, they're not able to see the through traffic. And so we looked at it at 2 meetings. Any request we come with, we do look at it, totality of it, and that was our discussion. One option that could be considered by the council is what we have done in the past is observe a 6 months observation, is to again prohibit parking a certain distance from the intersection on the east side only. As a sight line, we can say 200 feet from the intersection. So prohibit parking on the east side of Linden from Sheridan north, approximately 200 feet. That will provide, at least from the safety guideline. Again, that's just an option for observation. I'll have Sergeant Curran chime in with his comments and all, and then we can discuss or we can take any requests.
Great, thank you. Sergeant Curran?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with all the comments that have been talked about tonight. I do think this problem could be resolved with a sign on the east side. Ban parking a certain distance from the intersection. I think we could accomplish the goal of safety with one sign.
Okay. Any further comment or thought about that suggestion from the council? And then I'll open it to the public. Councilman Stone.
Just one question for the police department. Is safety, or maybe for Ramesh, is safety taken into consideration when this sort of request comes up? Did crash history play into this?
Yes, that is correct.
Because that was not included in the memo that we received. So.
Right.
Oh, yes, Councilwoman. When an item like this comes in front of the TMC, we do look at the history at that intersection. There was 2 accidents within the last 2 years at this intersection.
Can I ask how that compares to other intersections? Like, is 2 accidents in 2 years
Yeah.
a lot?
No, I don't think it is. With the amount of traffic that's on Sheridan Road, I would say it's not alarming.
And were they preventable accidents? Were they accidents that had anything to do with the sight lines or with cars parked?
So there was nothing that identified that it was possibly a sight line because of a parked vehicle. It could have been because it is the street is on an angle there, so it could be related to the sight lines at the intersection, but nothing in regards to a parked vehicle blocking someone's sight.
Thank you.
Finally, that he blew up.
Why don't we open it to public comment? Gita, best of luck. And I ask that those who wish to comment wait to be called on by the city manager. I don't know if you want them to raise their hands or how you're hoping to accomplish this, but please keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. Thank you.
Right. So Mr. and Ms. Starr, I know that you are on, they are the applicants for the parking restriction. So you can make your comments now. And if anyone else would like to speak, if you could just raise your virtual hand and then I'll just unmute you at that point.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you all very much for allowing us to address the council tonight. A number of the things I was going to mention have already been covered tonight, but the heart of the matter is that this is a serious safety matter. If you came to the intersection and you came down Sheridan and veered into Linden, which hundreds of cars do every single day at fairly high speeds, given the sight line, you just can't see cars and or light trucks parked on the east side of Linden. When you balance somebody's convenience versus the public safety for the community, it's pretty obvious to us how it ought to be handled. Now, I agree there are several options here, and we like the idea of the committee regrouping and looking at the options, but it's very important. It is a serious traffic hazard that needs to be addressed, and it's very important that it be addressed.
And this is Susan Starr, Bob's wife. Again, thank you for listening to us. I just want to say that the 2 cars are parked there since we've lived in this house for 9 years, in front of our house and close to the intersection. And I have gently, kindly asked the individual who parks both cars, please, it's a dangerous corner. Please do not park here. And I will say that the gentleman was extremely, he wants me to stop. Bob wants me to stop. But it's been, he's hitting me. Don't say anything else. But as far as like neighbor talking to neighbor, we have tried really, really hard. And the neighbor was not kind about it. It was quite the opposite. So it's dangerous. It's hard for us to come out of our driveway. On top of it, with the truck that has 100 bicycles on it, for us to see what's going on. I mean, I've almost hit people. They've almost hit me. It is a dangerous corner, and I think it's something, I don't want something terrible to happen to somebody. There are kids on bicycles because of COVID. There are people walking on the street there with dogs. I mean, it's not a pleasant sight. I'm out there a lot. I sit on my front lawn, and my heart curdles when I see almost accidents. So there you have it.
It's serious. This is not just an abstract,
Yeah.
theoretical thing. This
And
is a serious problem. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Gita, others who wish to speak?
I don't see any other hands raised, Mayor. Someone is calling from the phone number that ends in 191. So I'm going to unmute you if you'd like to make a comment, just in case you can't raise your hand from the cell phone.
They need to hit *6 to unmute if they're on a phone, I believe, right?
Yeah, I did unmute them. And then the other,
Go ahead.
We're not.
the other phone number, the individual is at City Hall and they do not wish to make any comments on the record.
Okay. 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 Well, we have The item as placed on the agenda is the full parking prohibition. Corporation Counsel, is it possible to amend this rather than having it go back to the Traffic Management Commission?
Yes, Mayor, this is not like a zoning action, and we may deal with one later tonight, as a matter of fact, where you're bound by the way in which the matter was noticed and publicly heard. This is just a recommendation from a non-public hearing commission. You're at liberty to adopt the ordinance in whatever manner you want.
Thank you. And I have one more question for either Public Works or Police. Is there any signage currently on either side of Linden, north of Sheridan on this block that talks about how people are not supposed to park within so many feet of the corner? You're muted.
No, Mayor, there isn't. Most of those,
Okay.
there's not.
Okay. So it sounded as though there was an option of potentially having no parking within a certain zone, not all the way to the bridge on the east side, and then just acknowledgement on the west side that people already are not supposed to be parking there. I think that's part of the issue, as people aren't aware of how far back from the intersection they need to be parking. And the issue on the eastbound side is quite different from the one on the westbound. The one on the eastbound is literally cars coming at 35, 40 miles an hour off of Sheridan, taking that right and slowing down abruptly with these parked cars on the east side. On the west side, it's really more of a vision issue. And if there's a car parked there, how difficult it is to see the eastbound traffic on Sheridan Road as you're trying to turn onto Sheridan Road. So that's what I'm seeking. Councilman Holloman, I see your hand up. I'm seeking a motion on the signage to be a more abbreviated answer to this question. I recognize that people have a philosophic issue with notice, and if that's the case, then maybe we go back and look at the process. But in terms of some stability at this intersection, I think there might be a compromise. Councilman Holloman?
Yeah, I disagree in the fact that it sounds like we're turning ourselves into the Traffic Management Commission and deciding what's best. So I would actually move to approve the amendment or the adoption of a resolution prohibiting parking on Linden Avenue between Sheridan Road and the bridge north of Sheridan Road as supported by the Traffic Management Committee. I'd make that motion, see if there's interest or in a second, and passing it, and then go from there if we need to.
And so my question is, if that fails, then there's no response to this situation.
Correct. Somebody else would bring it up as a different motion then, but I am making that motion, so I haven't.
Well, we can't take action on an amended motion once you've shot down number 4. If number 4 fails, then you're done, right, Corporation Counsel?
Right, and just although we are home rule, we don't have to follow strict Roberts rules. Roberts admonishes motion makers not to make motions that they would speak or vote against. I just throw that out. You can second a motion that you don't intend to vote against, but not to make the motion. We haven't always strictly enforced that. I just want to make that point. Mayor, if we proceed and allow the motion to proceed and vote on it, and it does indeed fail, there would be an ability to reconsider that at this same meeting and then adopt something different. So you're not completely foreclosed.
But somebody other than me would need to bring that amended approach.
Someone who voted in the majority would, the majority of what action was taken.
Okay. I see Councilman Bloomberg and Councilman Kaufman have their hand up. Councilman Bloomberg.
So if the motion is not seconded, however, a different motion stated in a positive fashion by another movement can also be made.
I did make a motion. I haven't heard a second.
Right.
You did make the motion or you did not?
She did.
I did.
Oh, okay. Okay. Councilman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, it seems like the two paths. One would be to send it back to the Traffic Management Committee. I mean, if people are in favor of that, or just come up with this on the spot, if people are in favor of that restriction within a certain distance north of Sheridan on the east side. Because it seems like even a lot of the comments from the neighbors seem to be realizing that might be a solution to this, a very narrow restriction as well. So to try to move this along, it seems one of those two paths would be wise. If there's
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second of the motion?
Are you talking, which motion did Dan
The
just?
motion by Councilman Holloman has not been
I made the
seconded.
motion as written in the packet.
And so there is no second. So now is there an amended motion or a related motion to this item 4?
I guess I would move to send it back to the traffic committee to reconsider with the input of impacted neighbors, including those who spoke tonight or other neighbors who may be impacted by it.
Second.
Do you want to give clarity in terms of Sheridan Road residents who are within so many feet?
Mayor, if I may, when we send notification out about the city council consideration, we send notification out to property owners within 400 feet of the subject site.
Okay.
It could be a consistent threshold in which to notify those neighbors.
Do you want to amend your motion, Councilman Bloomberg?
Well, part of the problem is that the language of the provisions for the traffic committee don't limit it by that distance. They limit it to those who would be impacted by the resolution. I'm not sure whether all the people spoke tonight were necessarily within that distance, but they are nevertheless impacted by it.
You could make the motion, though, to include that additional notice provision.
So then I guess the motion would be to send notice to people neighbors within 400 feet, as well as impacted neighbors.
Well, those who spoke tonight, I guess, how do you find?
Well, it would include those who spoke tonight because they've demonstrated they're impacted, but there are people along Sheridan Road and other places on Linden who might be outside of 400 feet who are nevertheless impacted if parking then shifts in some way or isn't permitted on some parts of the street.
Would you be?
Councilman Holloman and then Councilman Noble.
Yeah, I just want to say that's, saying people who are impacted. Well, I'm impacted if I want to go to the beach and I can't park my car there and I don't live anywhere near there. So I think there's got to be some kind of public notice or something that goes out. And beyond that, I'm not sure what you can do. I mean, the whole community could be impacted.
Right.
That is true.
Right.
We could put a notice at the intersection, and then anyone driving by who may have an interest in it then could contact us for further information.
Okay. Councilman Noble?
I'm having an issue with us having basically opening a Pandora's box all over again, and having everybody noticed and having all the neighbors talk about it some more, when this seems to be an issue that's twofold. One is there is a neighbor who was parking there who didn't really know that this was such a big issue. Now, do I agree that from what I'm hearing that there is a public safety issue? There is a public safety issue. Gita and I have talked because we are having this exact problem over on the west side. We're hearing from neighbors there. I would like we talked about it, that the council can make a decision without the input of every single neighbor in the whole city and kumbaya and let's have it all be peaceful. If there is a true public safety issue, which I do believe there is because I have driven over there and there is that sightline problem, can we table this and get a recommendation from staff, from our public safety experts? I am not one. I do recognize the problem, but get the recommendation of what we could do that would solve, at least in the short term, the public safety issue, and then review it in 6 months. Is it working? I know we don't like to put a traffic measure in that we then take out. We've had that even on Park Avenue, but I just don't see why we're going to spend more of staff's time with noticing everybody, going through this all over again. We've heard both sides. I'm not comfortable with the motion of having it all be open again.
Okay. Councilman Kaufman and then Councilman Stone.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, one as I understand, there is a sign there on the east side of the street that I think might be the speed limit sign or something. I don't know if we can just couple that sign. I don't know if it's that simple, but say no parking from here to corner. And, maybe that's about 100 feet from Sheridan. Maybe that's a relatively simple, inexpensive solution.
Mayor, can I?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, it appears that there's some kind of a compromise, at least in terms of, public safety. And I think, talking with our, traffic management committee, yes, if we can limit, as Councilman Kaufman said, maybe we take, between the intersection and the first driveway, it's 140 feet. That's the distance between the intersection and the Mr. and Mrs. Starr's driveway. So, and then 30 feet is our requirement within the intersection, not to have any cars for a stop sign. So yes, can we go, from the intersection heading north, we can say that up to 100 feet is a good enough distance. And then only on the east side, no parking from here to corner. Then the residents can park on the west side, and they can park north of this restriction. So that's an option. That's an option to discuss.
Councilwoman Stone?
I think that sounds like a reasonable option to me that would address the safety concern. But we have a motion on the table, I think, from Councilman Bloomberg.
We do, and a second. Councilman Bloomberg?
I'd be happy to amend it. There was a recommendation made by the police department tonight for a single sign, which they considered, based on the traffic studies that they've done and the data that they have, that would be adequate to address the actual safety problem. So I would amend my motion to allow the police department to place a single sign for no parking at a location of their discretion.
If I may, Mayor.
Corporation Counsel.
To accomplish the goal of the motion, Councilman Bloomberg, you may want to consider stating that you're going to amend the resolution that's currently in the package to direct the staff to amend the municipal code to install the sign of the manner that you described.
I would adopt that language.
I will second that.
Okay.
Can someone just repeat the motion just to make sure?
Yeah.
We're still
Can I,
what we have.
Steve, this was adoption of a resolution. There was nothing about amending the code in that number 4. I'm confused.
The resolution, yeah, the resolution that's in the package is to amend the code to all of our sign regulations are in our municipal code. This would have added, the resolution that's in the package would have added a provision in accordance with the municipal code to list the sign as one of the prohibited signs and allow for the installation of the sign.
But it says adoption of a resolution prohibiting parking on Linden between Sheridan Road and the bridge north of Sheridan Road, supported by the Traffic Management Committee. I'm not understanding where this reference to signs are if we're talking about the resolution that's printed in the packet.
It's section 72.001, Councilman Hollerman. What we're doing, what Councilman Bloomberg would be doing is directing pursuant to that same code section, taking the resolution that's in the package. We need a resolution to direct the staff to install a sign. It's not going to be a sign prohibiting parking. It's now going to be a sign that prohibits it within a certain distance. Right? Is that right, Councilman Bloomberg?
That's correct.
I mean, I guess the substance of what you want to.
Okay, I think that needs to be more specific because the resolution here is prohibiting parking. It's not putting a specific one.
And this is abbreviating that prohibition at the discretion of the police department in terms of mitigating the public safety issue. It's diminishing the range of the parking prohibition.
Correct.
And to be clear, and I want to clarify what Councilman Hollerman is, that the title to the resolution would also change to be in accordance with Councilman Bloomberg's motion. It would not be a prohibition of parking, as the title indicates. it would be a prohibition within a certain distance. It would be the title would read exactly as he is suggesting the motion.
Okay. So I think
Councilwoman
it needs to
Stone,
be
and then
restated.
Councilwoman Stone and then Councilman Noble.
Thanks. I wanted to see if we could also have staff facilitate a conversation between these two neighbors to try and work out their differences regarding the parking. That probably doesn't need to be in the resolution or anything, but that might be helpful.
Thank you. We'll turn to our EverCom city manager in that endeavor. Councilwoman Noble.
In the same vein, this does not necessarily need to be in the motion or the resolution. Can we, we've heard from residents, it's so dangerous. We've seen it ourselves. Can we keep an eye, can we ask the police department to keep an eye on this intersection and report back to us in 6 months? Just to see where we're at with it. We heard there were only 2 accidents. They were not related to the cars parked there. I'd love to hear, I hear from people all the time. I live by the most dangerous intersection in Highland Park. You should talk to the neighbor that just emailed me a half an hour ago about their most dangerous intersection of Highland Park. But this has clearly been brought to our attention. I would just like to hear back in 6 months.
Sounds good. Okay.
Mayor,
We
can
have a motion. We have a second.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
If I could just get clarification, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. So the request
Councilman-
motion to prohibit parking on Linden, on the east side of Linden, from Sheridan to approximately 100 feet up to the first driveway. And then we'll determine what exactly that is. Is that
To a
correct?
location to be determined by the Highland Park Police Department.
Police. And then I guess my other question is, would it be possible to include a sign that says, parking is prohibited from here to corner on the west side? It's already prohibited. I just don't know that people know that.
Again, I'm going with the information that we received here tonight, which is that the police department is of the opinion that a single sign limiting parking from that sign to the corner is all that is necessary to address the actual safety issues. I understand that there are other issues in terms of how traffic occurs. We're all concerned about that, and that is a very real issue that falls upon drivers and enforcement. But there are already speed restrictions. There are speed restrictions throughout the city. The appropriate signage was what was explained to us tonight, and that is the sole limit of this motion.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further comments, questions, concerns, or insights? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilwoman Stone,
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Holloman,
Nay.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 5 ayes, 1 nay, and we will move ahead. Thank you. That's on item 4. Thank you for the discussion, Councilwoman Stone.
One more quick thing on a tangent for this item. I want to make sure that we have a conversation about the policy of parking prohibition.
Absolutely. Going forward, what sort of process beyond putting the onus on neighbors to march around and get signatures and so forth? Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, I just muted myself. Next item is item 8, an ordinance amending the City of Highland Park Zoning Code of 1997 as amended, eliminating the pedestrian-oriented shopping overlay zone. Joel Fontaine is here to talk to us about this, and I know the packet was extensive. The conversation at the Plan and Design Commission was extensive. I do think there are a few questions that people may have, though. So wanted to give people the opportunity to weigh in with Director Fontaine. Director Fontaine, did you want to make any comments before we kick off?
I did not, Mayor. I'm here for any and all questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments from council members? Councilman Bloomberg.
Having been around at the inception of the POSO, I can't remember if it was shortly before I started as a commissioner on the Plan Commission or whether it was after I began.
2004.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure I was on the Plan Commission by then. I think it was a well-considered effort to try to consolidate and highlight and enlighten the experience in the downtown by accentuating retail sales. And it was a response to an influx of non-retail generating businesses that were beginning to infiltrate the downtown, affecting rental rates and affecting the walkability and overall experience of downtown. And we pushed that, and the goal was to make this a long-term commitment to really get all the landlords on board and to really make sure that we were doing everything we could to encourage downtown Highland Park as a retail mecca. We had an influx and an expansion of retail places, spaces with the installation prior to that of Renaissance Place, and it has been difficult. And I've fought hard that we should keep it even with some of the shrinkage. But I think that I have to say that the discussion in the packet, the work by staff, and the recommendation of the Plan Commission is pretty convincing, especially with everything going on in the world today, that it may be more important in the end just to do what we can to open up as much as possible to get at least to maintain property values as they may be. It's a very hard thing to let go of. I think it has been a great idea. There may be a better idea in the future, but for now, between what is going on in response to online shopping as well as the impact of the pandemic, I think what we can do to allow the existing spaces to be occupied both by retail establishments that fell within the POSO and other establishments that would fill storefronts is becoming a critical issue.
Thank you for your comments. And, in 2006, I was on your heels joining you on the Plan Commission. And as you might recall, a significant amount of time was also spent on dealing with related issues in Ravinia, the Ravinia Business District. So there was a concerted effort to ensure that retail was highlighted and that sales tax revenues were acquired. And so I guess my question is, while I strongly support, and we're going to discuss during our committee of the whole, providing support to our local businesses, both in light of this pandemic, but also previous to that, the related diminishment of bricks and mortar shopping, I have a concern about an overreach. I know when we had originally talked about this, several of us had looked at and had considered simply getting rid of the POSO east of the train tracks and seeing what impact that had. So I just want to share my own concern from visiting other towns that don't have POSOs, seeing the influx of, and not to knock dentists and lawyers and architects, but services in lieu of businesses. And believe me, I feel the pain daily of empty storefronts and want to do whatever we can to bring feet to the street. We've done that with our multifamily housing support, and those are ringing the central business district. One question that I do have for Director Fontaine is, can you clarify briefly, there was discussion of a commercial district versus the pedestrian-oriented overlay. What's the difference, and how does that help or hinder our end goal, which is to continue the vibrancy, to continue to support the businesses we have, to recognize the changing economics, and to move forward and still having a very vibrant and appealing downtown? Because I have to tell you, a lot of people come to Highland Park from other towns because of that vibrancy. And I recognize it is, to some extent, a burden to the property owners, but it also is the necessary incentive to continue that vibrancy. So if you could just touch on the commercial district versus the shopping district.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So initially during the summer, staff had come in with 4 different alternatives. One of them was a commercial overlay district, which essentially required it was really about whether or not and in what places in our downtown all residential buildings would be allowed. And the commercial overlay district idea was to make sure that the area in which the POSO currently exists as a starting point would be an area that would not allow all residential buildings. That matter fell to the wayside as we focused in on just the POSO and not addressing that issue at this time. So that's what that was about. It really doesn't have any more to do with the uses than just that. It would just be about B5 district uses. You eliminate the POSO, and in its place, we would have a overlay that would say, in this area, no all residential buildings could occur. They would have to be above first floor commercial. Then in other areas of the downtown, there might be an opportunity for an all residential building around the periphery or things like that made some sense potentially. So that's what that was about, really.
Great, thank you. Councilman Noble.
Sorry, I had to get to my mute button. Thank you, Mayor. I thank you, Councilman Bloomberg. You said everything I was thinking. I have said this before. I will say it again. I made this request. I have been working with the property owners and our businesses for years now, but most recently I talk to them daily. And what I'm hearing is, please let anything go into those spaces. And when I mean anything within reason, we certainly have restrictions. There's certain things that you cannot open anywhere in Highland Park, but having something in the place where we've seen the trends, the cupcakes, the banks, the nail salons, now we have exercise. They're happy to have them because that does bring traffic. And right now we talked about this in the last meeting. We are in a bit of state of emergency, as is everybody. We're not alone. But I do think, and I've said this before, I said this back in April, is we're in a time where we can be bold and we can reinvent ourselves and we can do whatever we can to help our businesses survive and thrive and attract. And then we can look at it again. And Councilman Bloomberg stated it perfectly as this may be a temporary solution. I think the POSO did what it was supposed to do for a very long time, but we've been chipping away at it. And with that, even pre-pandemic, we did not see the results of our chipping away at it. Right now, everything went out the window and we're in a completely here's a new slate. Let's paint on the new canvas. So I look at it and I go, let's start over, but let's give them a chance right now. We'd be lucky if we get something in. And I want to say we're open for business. We've got rid of the POSA. We've eased regulations. There isn't anything, if you went down the list and you checked, what did this city council do to be business friendly? We have just done it all. If you can't attract business with that, I put the burden on everybody else. Our residents need to start shopping locally and being here more often. Our property owners need to figure out a way of, maybe it's the condition of their buildings. They need to step it up. It's our businesses need to market themselves better. But I look and I go, I can go to sleep at night, rest my head on the pillow and go, I've checked every single box. I've done everything that we could possibly, or we as a group have done everything we could possibly do by repealing this POSO. So I am ready to call the motion if nobody has other questions, but yeah, I applaud the group.
Hands are up.
No, I'll second the motion. Go ahead.
All right, so Councilwoman Stone.
I have similar concerns to what the mayor had expressed. I am in favor of doing this on the east side of town. One of the memos that was in the packet, though, did talk about if we did this on the east side, we could consolidate those retail uses on the west side of the tracks. And to me, that sounded like a reasonable starting point. We've just put some of these multifamily buildings in. They're not even online yet, a few of the buildings, so they're not occupied. We will have more feet on the street once those buildings are complete. And I'd want to give this a little bit of a chance to see if it works to keep retail at least on one part of town.
Thanks. Councilman Bloomberg and then Councilman Hollivan.
Yeah, I thought about that and I appreciate the desire to retain some of the POSO, but we've just really done the right thing by encouraging a lot of residential development immediately proximate to the main shopping area of downtown. There are other things that we can do to encourage retail. One of the things that we're trying to do is to improve restauranting, which may become the backbone of retail. But the old idea of feet on the street and that retail begets retail is great. But when most of the downtown is being adversely affected by online shopping and by the pandemic, getting people downtown, unfortunately, may mean getting them into a dentist's office and then hopefully going next door to have a bite to eat when it becomes possible to go next door to have a bite to eat. At some point, and it's not now, we're going to have to look at the recommended redevelopment, physical redevelopment of downtown that was suggested to us by Lakota, which means an expansion of sidewalks that make it more walkable, that give more area outside of a restaurant to set up and make it a little bit more inviting and pedestrian friendly. But for now, regrettably, I think for me, I have to say we've got to just do what we can to start letting landlords maintain their buildings and improve the physical aspects of their buildings, and hope that that shows up in some way in how it affects everybody else's property taxes as those properties maintain or improve their value.
Thanks. Councilman Holloman, then Kaufman, then Noble.
Okay, we tried the POSO during the best period of economic gain in history, and it made marginal impact. It is time to do away with the POSO and to move forward. If we want to change our minds on that, so be it. Check in another year or two, but we have to do this. This is the most important thing that we can do for our downtown right now. There is not going to be any incremental easy fix. We are facing a monumental change in the retail environment, and failing to understand that is going to leave us behind.
Thanks, Councilman Holloman. I appreciate your stridency. I do question and challenge your assertion, but I'll just leave it at that. Councilman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I wish we were, I wish conditions weren't as, dramatic, so that we could do kind of a more incremental, relaxing of the POSO, but I do favor, for the reasons that Councilman Bloomberg and Councilwoman Noble said, that just, I think where we are, given the conditions of the pandemic and pre-pandemic paradigm shift, that I think we're better off at this point removing the POSO. We can always reevaluate at some point if conditions change dramatically.
Thank you. Councilman Noble.
I still stand by everything. The motion's still on the table, but I did want to bring up one of the points, Mayor, that you brought up, which was we had bifurcated the conversation. And I think it's really important. And I did mention this she's shaking her head, City Manager Newkirk, you know exactly what I'm going to say. I think it is prudent that we also take a look at the B5 and the development. I am, for one, I sat through the BDAG meeting, so I want to give those guys some credit too. We had sent this back through them. We had sent this to the PDC. We've had lots of voices in this, so I appreciate it. There was the temperature of those groups were both of, yes, let's take a look. We don't necessarily want to put full residential buildings in the heart of the B5, but yeah, there might be some specific areas that we should look at to say, you know what, this isn't the way it should be. I think that is our next positive step. Like I said, I'm just checking boxes here going, have we done everything? Can I go to sleep at night and feel good that I've done everything to help? That would be the very last box to check, is to take a look at some specific sites that could go full residential. They're so far out of the B5, on the fringe. And I remember Councilwoman Stone and I had talked about this, I feel like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. There were a couple of areas, the Bank of America building was one of them. That just should be the next conversation, so we can keep moving ahead and then go, okay, we've done everything. Now let's see what happens with the pandemic and reevaluate in a year.
And Mayor, we would like, so unless there are any objections, we would like to move forward as the next step. So it would be a review of all the uses in the B5 district, which would also include residential in certain parts of that district. So that would be the next initiative we would undertake, work with the PDC, and then come back before you with a report and recommendation.
Sounds good. Okay, any further discussion? And we have nothing from the public on item 8, as I recall, right? We have a motion. We have a second. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Mayor, to confirm, the motion is to adopt the ordinance that's which, just to clarify, eliminates the pedestrian-oriented shopping overlay zone.
From the entire central business district. Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
And before we take the vote, I think kudos are due to Councilman Noble. You really have spent and dedicated your time to helping our local economy and to putting incentives in place and to really looking at and analyzing every piece of what can we do. So the dog agrees, much appreciated.
Councilwoman Stone,
No.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Hallman,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
I prefer it to be on the east only, so I will be a nay vote. And so item 8 passes with 4 ayes and 2 nays. And again, thanks to everybody who put in as much time as they did on moving forward on behalf of our local economy. Thank you. Continuing on under other business, item 9. That was, we passed item 9. Item 10 is a public hearing related to the proposed budget for the City of Highland Park, a home rule municipality, County of Lake, State of Illinois for fiscal year 2021. With that being said, pursuant to Chapter 65 of the Illinois Compiled Statutes and Chapter 31 of the Highland Park Code, I hereby call to order the public hearing on the fiscal year 2021 proposed city budget. Pursuant to statute and ordinance, notice of this public hearing was published October 15, 2020 in the Highland Park News. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Stolberg, Councilwoman Stone,
Here.
Councilman Kaufman,
Here.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Here.
Councilman Noble,
Here.
Councilman Hallman,
Here.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. I will declare the public hearing on the fiscal year 2021 budget open. I will now turn the public hearing over to City Manager Gita Newkirk and Finance Director Julie Logan for opening comments on the proposed budget.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Before we dive into the proposed fiscal year 21 budget, I did want to take just a couple of moments just to talk about a couple of initiatives and kind of the state of the city of where we're at in 2020, which leads us into the development of the fiscal year 21 budget. Certainly, as everyone knows, this has been a challenging year in light of the health pandemic that we continue to face now several months into the pandemic. This pandemic has certainly reinforced the important role that municipalities play in emergency situations and particularly in this type of pandemic situation. And I believe the City of Highland Park has certainly risen to that challenge to address every facet of this pandemic in an effective and efficient way. Since February, we have worked tirelessly to maintain open lines of communication with the state and the county. We hosted regular meetings with our government partners and neighboring communities, and we continue that practice today. We have supported businesses, as Councilman Noble indicated, really being at the forefront of doing everything we possibly can to help our businesses succeed during this challenging time. We've worked to keep our employees and the public safe and informed, and doing all that cognizant of two of our major priorities, which is public safety and fiscal stability. So without question, and like so many residents and businesses, this pandemic has had an impact on the city's finances. Effective immediately in the first quarter, we did stop all of our spending that wasn't considered high priority and really a necessity. We maintained open positions on the personnel side to the greatest extent possible, and overall reduced our operations by $8 million in fiscal year 20, given the decline of revenue in really all sources. This reduction included a $1.5 million economic relief package that we provided to residents and businesses. Our supervisory staff all took furloughs, and overall, we're going into the new budget year with a 10% reduction of our workforce, which equates to approximately 27 full-time equivalent personnel. We are presenting a balanced operating budget for fiscal year 21 with no fee increases and a tax levy that presents no new revenue to the city. I do want to give special thanks to you, Mayor, and the city council members. Since January, we start talking about the next fiscal year budget, and this year was particularly challenging just in light of the pandemic, because in essence, we amended our budget mid-year, which required kind of a new budget process. And every step of the way, we were taking a look at the city's revenue, taking a look at our expenditures. And I applaud you for the sound policy decisions that the entire city council has made thus far. I want to give special thanks to our senior staff, all of our department directors, specifically Director Logan, who has worked tirelessly in fiscal year 20 as well as fiscal year 21 for all the diligent work, and really all of our employees, because all of us pay heed to how much we're spending, how we can operate more effectively and efficiently. And it's every employee's responsibility in this organization, and I think everyone does it very, very well. As always, we will continue to monitor all of our revenue projections on a month-to-month basis and act accordingly if we need to make any additional expenditure cuts along the way. And we'll continue to report to the City Council formally on a monthly basis. So all those monthly financial reports are posted on our website for public view at any time. So as part of the fiscal year 21 budget development and this public hearing, what you see before you is the agenda of everything that we'll cover this evening. And of course, we're happy to entertain questions along the way. One of the first things that we do as we are working on the upcoming budget development is we review our mission and priorities with the City Council just to make sure that, again, the mission and priorities serve at the foundation for everything that we do. And so we did review this mission and the priorities early on in the budget process. We did not make any changes for fiscal year 21 for either of these. The council and staff both felt that they still serve as a representative of where we are headed into the upcoming year. And then the budget schedule is also posted on our website. So formally, we started in May, but really we started in the first quarter. But in May, we held virtual neighborhood meetings with our government partners and businesses to get their feedback on the budget process as well as overall city services. And you can see there the various steps that we've undertaken to bring us up to this point today, which is our public hearing and presentation of our tax levy estimate. And then in terms of next steps, we will come back for formal consideration at a future meeting, and then we'll wrap up in December with the adoption of the tax levy. I'll turn it over to Director Logan now, who will walk us through the balance of the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Sorry, that was my table shaking. The proposed budget includes a balanced budget, as was just mentioned, with operating revenues expected to exceed operating expenditures by $10 million. Revenue of $79 million is expected to be approximately 3% lower than 2020. Expenditures of $86 million are expected to be approximately 4% lower than 2020. The city is planning $13 million of capital improvements. Pursuant to city permitted strategic drawdowns, total expenditures are expected to exceed total revenues by $7 million. The 2020 budget reflects the city's current estimates within an evolving pandemic economic environment. The city continues to monitor revenues monthly for changes versus expectations. Future amendment to the 2021 budget for revenue and expenditures may be required as the economic environment continues to evolve. The proposed revenue of $79 million comes from diversified sources that keep property taxes as low as possible, minimizing the impact of city services to the property taxpayer. Charges for services such as water, sewer, and parking are expected to be 38% of revenue. Sales and other taxes, excluding property taxes, are expected to be 36% of revenue, and property taxes are expected to be 21% of revenue. The 2021 budget and 2020 estimate for operating revenue reflect the city's estimates of the pandemic's negative economic impact, with the most significant impact in the city's general multimodal transportation and parking funds. The tax levy includes an increase offsetting the loss of vehicle sticker revenue from the city's repeal of vehicle stickers. This is not new revenue to the city. The change for an average $500,000 household is an increase in property taxes of $83 per year and a decrease in vehicle sticker cost of $83 per year for a net zero impact to residents. The city's property tax levy is expected to continue being approximately 7 to 8% of the residents' total property tax bill. No other tax or fee increases are planned for fiscal year 2021. 2021 proposed expenditures are estimated at $86 million. Given the most significant portion of city expenditures are for provision of services to residents, 61% are for personnel costs and contractual services. Personnel costs are budgeted lower due to reduction of 26.8 full-time equivalent employees from Economic Response Plan budget reductions, and 2021 returning to a normal 26 pay period year, net of salary adjustments based on bargaining unit contractual requirements and the city's compensation plan. Contractual services are budgeted $854,500 higher than the 2020 estimate and are relatively flat with the 2020 budget prior to the Economic Response Plan budget reductions. The increase is significantly due to $615,000 of higher equipment charges to division budgets, significantly driven by a fire engine replacement. Additional increases include $250,000 for arts grants, $200,000 for same coverage employee healthcare costs, $220,000 for snow removal costs given a lighter snow year in fiscal year 2020, and $200,000 for housing trust fund scattered site grants. These increases are net of $679,500 in lower Ravinia TIF contractual services with the completion of the streetscape and lighting improvement project in 2020. $13 million of proposed capital is consistent with the city's 10-year capital improvement plan and will be summarized on the next slide. $5 million of proposed debt service is consistent with the city's debt service schedule for previously issued debt financing capital improvements. And $12 million of transfers between funds are budgeted consistent with prior years, although down $164 million versus 2020. $10 million of the $13 million capital improvement budget is for infrastructure improvements, and $3 million is for priority one facilities and equipment upgrades. Infrastructure includes improvements to the city's streets, bridges, bike walk, sidewalks, street lighting, parking lots, water and sewer systems, and ravines. Priority one improvements represent the most critical projects based on life safety or health risks. The proposed capital will be funded by $6 million of excess fund drawdowns, $3 million of motor fuel tax and grants, $2 million of user charges, and $2 million of home rule sales tax, with no new debt planned for fiscal year 2021. The city invested $150 million in capital improvements over the last 11 years through fiscal year 2020 and is planning an additional $117 million of capital improvements over the next 10 years, including the $13 million planned for fiscal year 2021. Total fund balances at the end of fiscal year 2021 are projected at almost $34 million, with the general fund projected over $19 million. all fund balances meet or exceed the city's fund balance targets. Fund balances in excess of targets have been accumulated in expectation of capital improvements planned within the city's 10-year capital improvement program. All fund balances approach city fund balance targets by the end of the 10-year period. The proposed budget document was published on the city's website on October 19th and is also available at City Hall by appointment. The public hearing presentation will be posted to the city's website on October 27th. City Council will consider the budget on November 9th, and City Council will consider the tax levy on December 14th. I'm now happy to respond to any questions before concluding the city's public hearing.
Thank you, Finance Director Logan, and please share our appreciation and thanks with your team, with senior staff, and thank you to our city manager. Are there any questions or comments from City Council members? I know we all have had one-on-one meetings. We've all carefully read the draft. We've all sent you back copious notes. Didn't know if there are any further comments or questions from the group. Okay, do we have any from the public? City manager, any comments from the public on any of this?
No, ma'am. No, Mayor, not at this time.
Great, thank you. I will now entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilwoman Stone,
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Holloman,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays, and the public hearing has been closed. Individuals who are unable to attend this evening's public hearing may submit written comments to the attention of the City Finance Director. The City Council will consider an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2021 annual budget and related items at the November 9th, 2020 council meeting. And with that, is there any business from the council? Hearing none, is there any business from city staff?
Nothing further at this time.
Great. Okay. I am seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Will the clerk please call that vote?
Councilwoman Stone,
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Holloman,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes and no nays. The request has been made that we take a 2-minute break. We will take a 2-minute break and then we will reconvene for our committee of the whole meeting. Thank you.
That's still at this number though, correct?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for the City Council of Highland Park, Illinois, October 26, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Stolberg, Councilwoman Stone,
Here.
Councilman Kaufman,
Here.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Here.
Councilman Noble,
Here.
Councilman Hallman,
Here.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 13th, 2020 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote on the approval of the minutes?
Councilwoman Stone,
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Hallman,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes and no nays, and the minutes are approved. Moving on to our scheduled business. There has been a request for rent assistance to the Art Center Highland Park. Gita, Rob, who's talking about this with us tonight?
Manager Sabo is going to present a PowerPoint that we have. And I also just want to recognize James Lynch has joined us. He's the Executive Director of the Art Center.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, City Manager Newkirk. So tonight, there's a recommendation included in the agenda packet for rent assistance to the Art Center of Highland Park per a request that they had submitted to us in the amount of $18,900 in 2021. The funding for that amount would come from the city's public art fund. And in order to recuperate the funds at a later time, the recommendation includes extension of the Art Center's lease by 1 year at the end of the third renewal term to 2038. Or if the Art Center terminates their lease earlier, then repayment of the amount within 1 year from the termination date. The current Art Center lease, let's see, Councilwoman Stone.
Councilwoman Stone.
A quick question. Would that $18,900 be repaid to the Public Art Fund?
If the council directs it to be as such, we could write that into the lease provision.
Because I would recommend that we do that so that we have money to pay for the maintenance of our public art going forward.
Agreed. Okay, to be continued. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. The current lease with the Art Center was established in 2017 after a renegotiation of a previous lease. The current lease runs through 2022 and as mentioned before, has 3 renewal terms, which currently run through 2037. Rent in 2017 through 2019 was kept at $1,500 a month. As the council is aware, prior to the current lease, the Art Center had been paying rent at $1,500 a month for a number of years, and that was based on a revisit of their prior lease on an annual basis. In the current lease, their rent this year went up to $3,000 per month. However, in light of the financial challenges presented by the COVID pandemic, the City Council earlier this year approved a 3-month rent abatement, which equals $9,000. In 2021, the lease is scheduled to have a 2.5% increase on the rent, which brings them to $3,075 per month. Executive Director Lynch reached out to us with a request for rent assistance in 2021 on behalf of the Art Center, bringing their rent amounts to $1,500 per month. He had provided us with some financials regarding the Art Center's current year budget and fiscal impacts related to the COVID-19 budget reductions, which was reviewed by a number of members on city staff. This year, the Art Center is projected to be losing $33,000, a little over $33,000. In fiscal year 21, they are proposing a deficit budget, which amounts to a $44,000 reduction, and that already includes canceled programs, classes, special events, personnel reductions, instructor fee cuts, and various program costs, program expense reductions. A little background on the Public Art Fund. The fund itself was established to foster public art within the community, and accumulate funds in order to pay for larger expenses related to art. So for example, art acquisition. The fund itself is a balance sheet account. So when we use the word fund, it isn't a fund that exists within the budget book as a standalone fund. It's an account that exists within our balance sheet. The funding mechanism for the public art fund is after each year, the city annually budgets a amount on the expenditure side for art conservation, maintenance, acquisition, or facilitation. And at the end of the year, if those funds are unspent, the remaining balance is then transferred to the public art fund through a budget transfer done by the finance department. When that happens, the amount that's within that budget is expensed. And so when that last bullet there, you see public art fund expenses do not impact the budget. What that means is because of that annual transfer and that expense processing that we do each year, when we spend money from the public art fund, that does not get represented as an expense in the annual budget. So for example, when we purchased the HP 150 Ingress sculpture, we used the public art fund and paid for it through that fund, but it did not show up on the city's expenses for FY 2019 because it came off of the public art fund as the funds were accumulated by past expenditures. With respect to the Art Center's request, fiscal year 21 with the current lease amount equates to $36,900 over the course of 12 months. The requested amount of $1,500 a month brings their total annual revenue to the city on that lease to $18,000. Staff evaluated the financials within the city's budget, and we did not budget for a reduction in rent revenue from the Art Center in 2021 in the proposed FY21 budget. A solution that we came up with and are recommending this evening is to take the difference between the $3,075 and the $1,500, which is equal to $18,900, and make that contribution from the Public Art Fund to the Art Center in fiscal year 2021. What that will do is it will not incur an expenditure on the city's part, because as I explained, that's a balance sheet account we're spending off of. And in turn, the Art Center will then pay us the amount that they are supposed to be paying in accordance with the lease terms, which is $3,075 per month. In essence, what it's doing is it's providing rent assistance, bringing their total spend when netted out with the revenue to $1,500 per month, while at the same time not requiring the city to reduce its revenues to provide that assistance, but also supporting the Art Center's financial situation. As it relates to the Public Art Fund itself, the current balance within that fund is $20,350. Now, as I explained, we have $4,000 in the budget right now that is specifically in an account for public art, which we do not anticipate spending before the end of this year. At the end of the year, if that money is unspent, we plan to transfer it to the Public Art Fund, which brings the account balance to $24,420. If the council supports the recommendation this evening, the balance would then come down within the Public Art Fund to $5,520. And in FY21, we have once again budgeted within the FY21 expense accounts funds for public arts in the amount of $5,000. And in addition to that expense account, there's $5,520, leaving a total for public art in 21 of $10,520. Now, in FY20, in this year, 2020, we were planning on undertaking a art conservation program to evaluate all of the existing public art pieces in the city and to set forth a maintenance plan as well as a budget for any sort of expenses related to upkeep and maintenance of the city's existing public art collection. Our plan is to revisit the RFP, which we conducted earlier this year, to check in with all of the proposers to make sure that those proposals remain valid and the amounts are still current, and to undertake that project in 2021 based on the median proposal in 2020, or based on the median proposal from that RFP. We feel that there's enough funds after this contribution to the Arts Center to still complete that project. And so for the council's consideration this evening is a recommendation to provide that 18,900 in fiscal year 21 from the Public Art Fund. And the question of whether or not to extend the lease for 1 year with rent of $18,900 through 2038. I will note for the council's consideration that I received a request from the Art Center that the lease extension provision and repayment amount be not be required. And so I'm passing that along as a request that the city received from the Art Center. And so, Mayor, turn it back to you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Councilman Noble.
Can you go back for a second, Rob? They made a request. They are asking for the loan, but they don't want to have to pay it back.
Correct. They've requested that the amount being provided, the $18,900, be provided as a grant, and that they not be required to pay it back at a future date.
Okay. So they haven't watched our budget discussions. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. I fully support you're laughing, so am I. I fully support the Art Center. I think it's a gem. I think they're doing wonderful work there and they're trying their darndest, but this is public money and we have so many not-for-profits that would like the same amount of money. We give a certain amount of money to the Highland Park Community Foundation to give out to other not-for-profits that, my gosh, they would love that money too. I'm happy to help them stay afloat for a little while longer and work out a something that's palatable both for our budget and for theirs. But yeah, that last part, I can't agree with. We can't. We have, to Councilwoman Stone's point, we have artwork that needs to be maintained. That we will need that money. But yeah, I'm willing. I appreciate everything you've done with working with them, and I certainly have supported them tremendously over the years and continue to. So we can continue to give them our support in other ways, but we can't give them that money permanently.
Thank you. Councilman Holloman and then Councilman Kaufman.
Agree that this is a unique and amazing organization that deserves our support, but this isn't the first time that they've needed financial assistance and we've changed rent structures and done things like that. Has there been a comprehensive conversation with them about the viability of this organization in terms of a long-term plan? Be interested in hearing that, because the fact that they're asking for a grant says to me that they don't anticipate being able to pay this money, period. So if we're making this concession, we're basically admitting that they can't afford to pay it back because they've already told us that they don't want to or can't. And it might be time for a broader conversation about the use of the space. If we're going to basically float this for free and make this a no-cost space for this organization, it makes me think that there's other organizations that would benefit as well. And this is a very large space. Maybe it's time to think about an evaluation and trying to understand how we could best serve the community with the space and not a single organization.
Mayor, I could respond to one aspect of that.
Sure.
And certainly Mr. Lynch is on the phone. You can hear directly, or on the call, you can hear directly from him as well. So they do have a plan for financial sustainability of the Art Center. And I believe what you'll hear is certainly just with the pandemic and the increased challenges with operating classes, which is the primary reason for the consideration brought forward to you this evening. Longer term, we actually have reached out. Most recently, there's a dance studio that was interested in space. And so we have put them in touch with the Art Center as an opportunity to possibly co-op space. So that could be a win-win that provides them a revenue stream and also brings a new business to the community, which would be a good solution. So I believe that they are, and we have encouraged them to look at opportunities such as that to maintain the financial and operational sustainability of their operation.
Mayor, may I make one quick note as well? So I did speak with James as well this afternoon, and he did indicate that the Art Center would be okay with accepting whatever direction the council went, whether it be to repay it in the future or not. So I just would like to put that on the record as well.
Thank you. Councilman Kaufman and then Councilman Bloomberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I agree with Councilman Noble and Hellman in that the Art Center is a gem and a really amazing organization. So, and I think it really is one of the jewels of our community, especially given our tremendous history and tradition of supporting the arts in the community, and not to mention all the seniors who use it and the education enrichment for our youth in the community. I support the staff recommendation and do appreciate the Art Center's efforts to try to look in with the city at kind of a more broad plan for financial sustainability going forward. But I think the best we can do now is go with the staff recommendation at this point.
Thank you. Councilman Bloomberg and then Councilwoman Stone.
Thank you. I agree with that too. You know, interestingly, since James has taken the helm, there has been an improvement in their financial disposition. They've been making their rents. They've made some really great efforts. I think they're looking, had this not happened, at potentially expanding at a identifiable future date, but to do a feasibility study in the interim. I hear what everybody's saying, and I echo that. Arts in Highland Park are really critical. Art is very difficult to sustain as a high income, high profit making endeavor under any circumstance. So the fact that they, before this crushing pandemic really impacted them, they were beginning to make progress, to me says, you know, I would be happy to provide the assistance that staff is recommending, with the understanding that it would have to be repaid. And I think that they would be able to do that. If they can't, obviously that's something that would have to be discussed at that time. But this is an unusual situation. We pointed that out under similar circumstances. At the last meeting, I spoke to you, Mayor. I've sort of relented on my feeling. We're going to discuss that shortly. I think it's important to do what we can to maintain whatever vibrancy and attraction we can to help the city with the level of financial responsibility that we've insisted on.
Well said. Thank you. Councilwoman Stone.
I agree. I'm supportive of providing this relief with the caveat that the money go back into the Public Arts Fund when it is repaid. And I feel for James, having run a nonprofit organization in 2001, when we were finally starting to get on our feet, and then 2001 happened, September 11th, and things just went downhill. And so he was finally getting the organization back on its feet, and then he had the COVID situation happen. So I think it's a difficult situation, but hopefully will be short-lived.
Thank you. I agree. I think it's vital that we provide them with the necessary lifeblood, with the caveat that it be repaid back into the Public Art Fund. So thank you for the analysis and the direction. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
The next item is proposed financial assistance for retailers and restaurants grant program.
Mayor, I just want to recognize Mr. Lynch does have his hand up.
Okay, we'll certainly be happy to hear from James Lynch.
I should just say thank you. And I am saying thank you on behalf of the Art Center, but I wanted to just make sure it was clear that I've been running the Art Center for 2.5 years. I've been heavily involved in the arts here. I've 2 terms on the Cultural Arts Commission. I'm on the Public Arts Advisory Group. And the reason I took this position was to turn it into a viable and healthy organization. Within 6 months of my taking over, we were income positive, which they didn't ask me to do, but we accomplished. We did it for 2 years in a row. And this year, before COVID, we were on track to do the same. We have increased our social media presence. We have new donors at a higher level than has happened before. So Councilman Holman, I invite you to come take a tour. I'll tell you everything that we're up to, all of our plans. We've been all about inclusion, not just being a small player. We have a high level of gallery, higher than you've ever seen it before. We have people submitting from St. Petersburg, from Paris, from regularly around the world. We have an exhibit that we're sharing right now with Museum of Childhood Ireland. So if you haven't been here lately, maybe you haven't been here. So I want to invite you all to take a tour and see what dynamic and impactful to the whole community plans we have for it. But first and foremost, thank you, and I promise you that you will keep seeing good results from us. But we needed a little breather, considering including the surge that's going on right now, and that we stopped using our building entirely for rentals to be good citizens. So we're hoping, as well as you are, it's a temporary thing. So thanks for your confidence in us.
Thank you, much appreciated. And here's to better health and more events at the Arts Center coming up soon. Our next item is on electrical aggregation opportunity.
Mayor, do you want to do the financial assistance program first?
I beg your pardon. I started to introduce that and then got distracted by the barking dog. Please go ahead with the financial assistance to restaurants. Thank you.
Well, as the council is well aware, this is a follow-up to the last committee of the whole meeting. So our staff, led by Assistant Manager Rob Sabo and Business Development Manager Carolyn Hirsch, we've put together a recommendation. With your support this evening, we're ready to promote it starting tomorrow. And so Rob's going to walk us through the terms and conditions that we've outlined for your consideration.
Thanks. Thank you, Manager Newkirk. So included in the agenda packet is a recommendation to establish a financial assistance for retailers and restaurants grant. We're calling it the FAR grant, with a recommended budget of $250,000. And the purpose of the grant is to offset expenses related to providing a safe and comfortable environment for customers in light of COVID-19 mitigations and requirements. We'll talk about just the different impacts through the presentation and the various expenses that businesses are currently facing. For some background, back in March when the pandemic really began to accelerate, we in the Business Development Office mobilized very quickly, and I have to recognize Business Development Manager Carolyn Hirsch and Business Assistant Melissa Rosen, who've done yeoman's work really just on a day-to-day basis, working very closely with all of our different businesses. It's been a lot of background work, and they've been working tirelessly nights, weekends, so a special thank you to them. The COVID-19 has presented, without a doubt, unprecedented hardship for retailers and restaurants. The stay-at-home order that we all experienced early in the year very importantly saved lives, but it did present financial challenges to various businesses, whether it be retailers who had to close operations, restaurants who could no longer serve customers inside and could only resort to delivery or curbside pickup. And even today, we're dealing with different regions around Illinois going back into mitigations, with today an announcement about suburban Cook County restricting indoor dining. And so continued challenges with limited occupation remain. Recently, on a presentation by the National Restaurant Association, they explained that restaurants are struggling to survive on curbside pickup alone. Historically, they've offered a wide variety of dining opportunities and catering services, which all are currently on hold. And in addition to that, restaurants right now are carrying about an average of 16 days of cash on hand. And so they are, without a doubt, very cash strapped. The financial challenges are exacerbated by the upcoming challenges and difficulties that the upcoming winter may present, especially in the northern climate, where we have cold weather and we're not accustomed to necessarily outdoor dining like places where people are in Colorado and ski resorts. And so businesses are really thinking of ways to continue to offer their services while keeping customers safe. As I mentioned, early on in the pandemic, we mobilized quickly, and this is just a brief snippet of the many different initiatives that our business development staff undertook. After outdoor dining was mobilized, allowed by the state, we quickly created a zero-cost license program and worked very closely with all of our restaurants, and within 2 days, and retailers, excuse me, and fitness businesses, and within 2 days had a program up and running with a licensing review process that involved all departments, and we expedited those under the leadership of Manager Newkirk, and we are getting those out very quickly. In addition to that, we've been helping our businesses navigate the various federal and state financial assistance programs. While those programs are great that they are available, there are a lot of fine details that need to be reviewed and information presented by the businesses. So our business development team has been really boots on the ground helping them get through those things. We've also been helping with resourcing PPE and safety supplies and equipment. We put in place quickly a parking modification to allow businesses to set up curbside pickup when that became when the stay-at-home order went into effect. So this is just a brief snippet. There's much more information posted on the city website. In addition, the city helped a number of our businesses. We have just under 900 registered businesses in the city. So you can imagine that there's been a lot of communication happening. But with the EIDL, the PPP grants, big grants, we've been working closely with all of our restaurants as well as state representatives and federal representatives to make sure that our businesses are getting these grants funded to them and also helping them get through the grant process, since, as I said, in some cases they are complex. And so thinking about how to support our restaurants, staff has established a grant which would provide a 50-50 matching grant. Retailers would be a $5,000 proposed amount, and restaurants are proposed at $10,000. And this is just based on the cost of providing the mitigating equipment needed. Restaurants have a lot more exposure. Masks are off, you need barriers, safety equipment spread out, and outdoor dining. The grant eligibility, based on the conversation we had at Committee of the Whole last meeting, is the same as the Small Business Facade Improvement Grant Program, whereby a business that is valued at $2 million or less and generates an annual profit of $200,000, of up to $200,000 over the course of 2 years is qualified. And those are the exact same standards that we have for our Small Business Facade Improvement Grant. And we've established a process where we work with the businesses to review those specifications. In addition, with the FAR grants, we've established the same as the small business grants, that if a business does choose to move out, we're recommending that if they move to another community, that within less than a year, that they repay 66% of the allotted FAR grant amount that they received. If they move out between 1 and 2 years, 33%. And then if after 2 years they move out, then at that point they wouldn't be required to repay the amount. And again, this is consistent with our Small Business Facade Improvement Program. After the expired period for this program, if any funds remain unspent, staff is recommending that those funds be placed back into the Sustainability Fund. As we look at eligible expenses, this is just a snippet, but various different costs, sanitizers and dispensers. And as we thought about this program, one thing we really kept in mind was when a business in the upcoming months is really thinking about, do they purchase food or cost of goods that they plan on selling, or safety equipment, and they're facing a conundrum of buying one versus the other, we didn't want them to feel like they had to sacrifice on the important safety precautions or the COVID necessities. And so this program offers support to help offset those costs. And so that way businesses can continue to purchase the things they need to operate, but at the same time equip themselves with all the necessities that this unprecedented situation has created. We're proposing that expenses from August 15th of this year through December 31st of 2021 be eligible, or sooner if funds are depleted. So if the program amount, if the allotted amount is depleted before that December 31st date, then at that point the program would end. With respect to the financial impacts, so the sustainability fund, within the packet, there's a couple different scenarios and we'll go through them, but the sustainability fund over the past few years has accumulated funds with the intention of providing contributions to purchasing environmentally friendly vehicles, as well as making contributions to green infrastructure. So green infrastructure is it helps with stormwater runoff and decreasing pollution that's accumulated through stormwater runoff, as well as on-site capacity, water retention, percolation. So for example, the city's Hazel parking lot used a contribution from the sustainability fund to install permeable pavers to help keep water runoff from going into city sewers. And so funds from the sustainability fund were proposed to be used over the next few years to help offset the cost of putting those green infrastructure components into larger projects within our CIP. The sustainability fund itself is funded through revenue that is set by the city's commercial and residential waste hauling contracts. In the commercial contract this year, we are getting just over 108,000, and that has an annual increase based on CPI or at a minimum 2%. The residential contract is a fixed annual $20,000. In addition, we do get extra recyclable revenues, which, as we know, fluctuate and is really dependent on the value of those recyclable products at market. And so some years that's up and some years that's down. It's not necessarily a revenue stream that we are relying on a consistent basis, whereas the contracts that we have for our haulers are set. With respect to planning and how we've been working with Public Works on the green infrastructure contributions, there's about a $500,000 in contribution amounts that's been planned in 2022 through 2026 for projects that have been outlined within the agenda packet. So going into the different scenarios, scenario one, which is included in the packet, takes into account what would happen to the sustainability fund if we continue as we are currently planned to do without the grant. So this is staying on the course that we currently are. Looking at the fund, you'll see that from 2016 through about 2020, we've been on a growth trend, and that's based on the new sustainability plan that we put in place in 2017, identifying a desire to make more contributions to larger expense items. So we reduced the amount that we were spending on consulting, various different programs, and allowed the fund to expand so that we can start making those contributions. Based on the proposed the proposal in scenario one, and then again, this has no grant contribution. This is just a current, if we were to proceed as we originally had planned, and a $100,000 contribution from the sustainability fund to these CIP projects, we would draw down the sustainability fund by 2025 to about $55,000, just over $55,000. That also assumes an annual contribution of $10,000 for vehicles. Now, looking at the fund balance within the sustainability fund and working with the finance department and Public Works, we looked at other sources to be able to make contributions to these green infrastructure projects while being able to provide funding for the proposed FAR grant. And in scenario two, which is in the agenda packet, in the slide in front of you, you see that the fund goes through the growth cycle and then incrementally begins to decrease and eventually gets down to about $38,085 by 2025, and this includes a contribution of $227,500 from the sustainability fund, which the funds currently exist in that fund, as well as annual contributions of $50,000 to the CIP, and the other portion of that contribution will be offset by funds which exist within the sewer fund or other funds that may be available within the CIP. This also continues to assume that we, on an annual basis, contribute $10,000 to our environmentally friendly vehicles purchasing, which typically allows us to purchase 2 vehicles. We've also proposed in our projections that sustainability fund operating expenses generally be held flat year over year with slight increases. So when I say flat, that means we retain our SWALCO membership We continue to budget for sustainability consulting. The GRC core program has been very beneficial to us. We're in year 3 of that. That actually has allowed us to decrease our sustainability consulting expenses, given that that position, or that volunteer, I should say, is helping us out with our sustainability projects. And lastly, we continue to maintain a line for grants and sustainability project implementation. In addition, each year the Sustainability Fund provides funding for 2 part-time employees who staff our recycling center, which is open on Tuesdays as well as the first Saturday of each month. So again, just showing the 2 different charts here. In both scenarios, the Sustainability Fund is projected to be drawn down and get towards our fund balance target, which is 10%. And we are still providing in scenario 2 with the grant that, if the council supports providing the grant amount from the Sustainability Fund, we're still able to accomplish the green infrastructure projects that we're aiming to perform with money both from Sustainability Fund and from the Sewer Fund. In addition to Sustainability Fund, we're also proposing the reallocation of some funds within our general fund, specifically in our business development division, namely based after our last conversation, reallocating 12.5 from what was budgeted for the Visit Lake County Convention and Visitors Bureau, as well as reallocating 5,000 from our proposed $15,000 small business facade improvement grant budget, and also reallocating 5,000 from our advertising budget. In addition, at the last meeting, this wasn't included in the agenda packet, but we wanted to suggest it as a recommendation from staff that be allocated to this program, and that's a question for council's consideration. And so before you on the slide are all the different matters of consideration for the council. I won't go through them since this is everything we've presented, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the program as they may arise. And Mayor, I'm going to stop sharing so people can see one another, and then I can always share the screen again.
Thank you. And thank you for the out of the box thinking. This in no way diminishes our prioritization of sustainability, but it's a recognition of an opportunity, as we just talked about with the Arts Center, for cash flow in a crisis, with the potential that the projects that are still prioritized will continue to go forward. And so I just want to thank you for sort of the creative approach. Councilman Noble.
I echo that sentiment. I brought this forward and I didn't want to be greedy. So I was like, okay, we'll do it on a smaller scale. And where can I find some money here and there, like the Visit Lake County money and shifting a few dollars around? You guys hit it out of the park. And like I said earlier, first I want to say thank you. Second, I want to make sure that if the money doesn't get used up, which I don't think is going to happen, because all weekend long I was getting text message and calls from business owners saying, I heard there's a grant thing. How do I apply? I'm like, it's not ready yet. So I think we're going to see it used up fairly quickly. So they better get in line because it's first come, first served, as fast as you can do it. But if there is money left over, that it goes right back into that sustainability fund. So that was the one thing that I wanted to make sure of. Again, Mayor, I echo your sentiment. It doesn't diminish our priorities, but right now we won't have any vibrancy without helping these guys. And as I said earlier, we're checking all our boxes, and I'm really proud of all of us for doing that, or those of us that are willing to take that step to go. We can go to sleep at night knowing that we have literally done everything we could to help our businesses and our landlords, and our residents need to, get out there and shop local and keep our businesses and our restaurants going. But thank you for this. It was incredibly comprehensive. I'm like, go get it out there, get the application done. I can stop having them text me and let them go to you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stone.
Thanks. First of all, I think that it is maddening that the federal government has not stepped in to provide more aid to small businesses. And I'd like to ask that we send a letter from the city to our federal officials to ask that they include that in an aid package, and they get that done sooner.
We've done that, and we've also called them.
Okay, good, thank you. But of course, we all support our small businesses, but the Environmental Sustainability Fund was created for a reason, and that reason hasn't changed. Scientists have said we have only 10 years remaining to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions if we are to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. and sustainability is and always has been a priority of the city. $227,000 is a significant amount of money to take from this fund. The total anticipated expenses for sustainability for 2020 are only $131,000. And as Rob has said, we've been trying to build up money for larger initiatives in this fund. I think it's a dangerous precedent to take money from a fund devoted to environmental sustainability and to spend it for another purpose. But if we are going to do this, I think that we should do it as a loan from the sustainability fund to business development. And once the sales tax revenues increase again, I think we should put the money back into the environmental sustainability fund.
Thank you. Councilman Bloomberg.
I agree. This is a pretty amazing presentation that's based on some pretty hard work and thoughtful investigation of what's available and what we can do with our budget. And I think it reflects the fact that the budget is pretty solidly constructed to be able to develop a plan like this. I do agree with the goal of ultimately reinstating and restoring the environmental sustainability fund, because that's going to become more critical in future years after we get past this pandemic. But Mayor, as I told you in a private conversation we had shortly after the last meeting, I was very persuaded by your very fervid explanation of the critical situation that we're in, and I'm persuaded by that. I certainly expressed and have some reservations about taking money from other funds that it isn't specifically related to, but I think that the case has been very strongly made. There are a variety of contributing factors from the outside that make this necessary that are extremely unusual. It is carefully planned out, and there are a number of factors from within the manner in which staff has constructed a plan to provide some level of relief at a local level, which is difficult and important to do in order to maintain as much of the day-to-day events and life in Highland Park as we possibly can, understanding it just can't get to that level. We have to do what we can to support the businesses that feel that they can contribute during this period. And we have within this some plan as to how to come out of this. Although we won't know what out of this really means for a while. We're going to have to address that on a more global manner and a more detailed manner at that time when we really know what it looks like. So for now, I'm very comfortable with this.
Thank you. Any other council members? Councilman Kaufman, Councilman Holloman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I too really appreciate all the work and thought and ingenuity of staff in coming together with this, and all the work that's been done leading up to it, and including Councilman Noble's work before this. And really do think we need to reach out to our businesses and lend them a helping hand with incentives and that sort of thing. I would feel, I'm hoping that we can reach a consensus that this money would be restored to the sustainability fund, because a couple of things. One, as Councilman Bloomberg noted, I mean, this is a dire situation. We need to help the businesses, but we also have longer term issues, as we talked about last time, as do all businesses in all communities, both with the paradigm shift and then now the impact of the pandemic. So I think this is a kind of a more urgent, immediate situation, but I think we want to look in the future and go back to this whole concept of our holistic business plan, being strategic and being innovative about that. And then with respect to sustainability, as Councilwoman Stone pointed, that's a long-term, not that long-term, unfortunately, problem that really will require a lot of attention and a lot of resources. So I'd like us to see us keep in mind, if we can, those different intertwined goals, and maybe not all intertwined, but at least all important goals, and have this money come, if it's going to come from the sustainability fund, which is, I think an unusual situation, but have it restored there over time at least, so that we can make sure we have enough to work toward that long-term, really serious goal too.
Thank you. Councilman Holloman, then Councilman Noble, but I do have a quick question for Rob, and that is the commercially derived revenues. Are those from apartment buildings or are those from restaurants or are they from both?
They are from both. So if an apartment building has a dumpster rather than individually serviced carts, that would fall into the commercial hauler agreement rather than residential.
Okay. I mean, the reason why I asked that is if your restaurants go away, now you're kind of mitigating some of the opportunity to even recoup the renewables and the recyclables that you're then using to feed this fund. It is somewhat cyclical. And just to put my point on from last time, if you have diminished sales tax and beverage revenue because of difficulties that our restaurants are having, then more significant cuts are going to have to occur to this budget than sustainability. And that's just the harsh reality of this economy and the impact that this pandemic is having. So I don't want to sound like Chicken Little, but numbers are numbers and math is math. And this is the reality that we're dealing with right now. I think it was Councilman Holloman and then Councilman Noble.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody who's put so much thought into this. I'd like to see us, and I appreciate Councilman Noble for spearheading the effort. I agree. This is, and with everything she said, and this is an important initiative that we should move forward on. In terms of paying back the fund, if you want to open that discussion, I'd like to open the discussion of paying back the Piers building, which we borrowed $1 million for to start the housing trust fund. So if we're going to start talking about, you know, how we've reallocated resources and what we need to pay back, I want to open that as well. So I just want to throw that out there. For repaying something, I think we should repay Piers, not just this.
Thank you. Councilman Noble?
So to that end about the repaying, that's not how this budget works. So if you'd like to say, oh, we should take it out of our business development budget, there almost is no budget. The money that our businesses generate is money that we put into our SIP plan, our streets, our sewers. It pays for us to have infrastructure here. We don't take money from our businesses that they generate and then put it into a business development fund that we can have a parade with. It just doesn't work that way. So I appreciate what everyone's saying about repaying the fund. And like I said, I didn't want to be greedy. So when I first brought this forward, I was like, okay, $20,000. I already knew where I could get $12,500 from because we were going to cancel a subscription to something that wasn't working. But I just want to be clear about our budget. It just doesn't work like that. And the money that's in the business development fund, again, I got the budget sitting right here to the left of me, is open it up and look at business development. There's TIFs and there's SSAs. That's not our money. That money is not money that we put in there. That's money that came from outside, if you understand what a TIF and an SSA is. And I live and breathe this stuff with these guys every single day. I mean, the way Councilwoman Stone works on in sustainability, I spend that much time on business. So I just want to be careful to that end. This is a short term, one time. We're not doing this again. This is a finite amount of money. When it's gone, it's gone. Like I just said, it's first come, first serve. Get those applications and we'll review them. When it's gone, don't expect the city to step up and do this every time. I now put the burden on these guys. Fill those storefronts. Generate that revenue. Bring us the feet on the street. We as a group, whether we've all voted for every single thing or not, we as a group have put more units in Highland Park. We have now taken away the POSO. We have beautified. We have, prior to the pandemic, I walked that central business district every single spring with the mayor, with all of those property owners. We find those who were not doing the right thing. We made those landlords come into compliance who were, and then we fixed our own streets. So like, again, we checked every box, but be very careful about saying that we should take money from the business development fund. There is no money there. You don't understand how the budget works if that's what you're saying. I'm so sorry to say that. That money is what pays for roads and sewers. So this is happening at the expense of other things happening all over Highland Park. But again, it is a one-time thing. It is probably never going to happen again in our lifetime. So I just wanted to be clear about the whole putting the money back and moving it around. It just doesn't work that way.
And it's a match. So it's requiring an investment from the businesses to support this situation. I've lost track of whose turn it is. I think Councilman Bloomberg and then Councilwoman Stone, or am I making that up?
No, I think that's right. I'm not retreating in any way from my support of this plan, but there was a discussion about trying to replenish the finances that are being taken out of this dedicated fund, and I don't want to lose track of that. I'm perfectly happy to have a discussion about reinstating money that's been taken out of other funds. I think that's a totally appropriate conversation. To say the budget doesn't work that way doesn't mean that that these things can't happen or shouldn't happen. And it may be that as we sit here at this moment, we don't know exactly how that's going to occur. But the issue with environmental sustainability is an issue that we are going to be faced with pretty hard as soon as we're out of this pandemic. We've talked about the absence of federal assistance with respect to the pandemic itself. There's also been an absence of federal assistance with respect to the environment, environmental sustainability, solar power, and other alternative forms of transportation, power, and electricity that is going to fall more and more onto our shoulders. And I'm not satisfied just as a policy to say this is a one-time takeaway, and in fact, it may be. The environmental issues that we are going to be facing as human beings and as a local government are going to be hitting us pretty solidly within the expiration of this pandemic, if to the extent that we survive it as a population. That was one of the #1 health crises facing the entire world as we went into this. So to the extent that we can figure out how to re-budget or resustain this dedicated fund after we get past this crisis, I'm not eager to give that up. We may not have a solution at this minute, but it is not something I'm willing to write off as simply our budget doesn't work this way. Our budget can work this way. If we need to look at sustaining other funds and re-imbuing money into other funds that have been depleted for momentary and important needs that were indeed important, we should look at that. But I'm not willing to just write it off as a one-time deal and never look back. I'm just stating that as an observation, not as an opposition to doing what has been recommended by staff.
Thank you. So as somebody who came into this council and urged more transparent accounting and accountability, I think we're all on that page. I think we are all on the page of prioritizing and recognizing sustainability as an issue, both now and in the very near term as a crisis. That being said, we are in a monetary crisis. We have businesses in a monetary crisis. That is the decision that we have before us this evening. I look forward to your emails. If you have a request or an idea about the budget, about how we budget, about going forward, God love Julie Logan and Gita Newkirk for getting us to a balanced budget for fiscal year 2021. I'm ready to fire up my oven and start baking brownies and selling them on Sheridan Road, given the current situation. So if we could move on this decision, I'd appreciate it. And then I'm happy to have a much broader conversation about funds, fund balances, where money's coming from, where it's going in the future. Today, we don't have a lot of money. Today, we're busy trying to figure out how to sustain our local economy. This is the question that's before us. I'm looking for 4 or more people nodding their heads going, yep, let's do this for our businesses. Let's get on with this meeting. And I don't say that to diminish, you're nodding. I don't say that to diminish anything along the lines of sustainability or responsible budgeting. I hear you, but move on.
I appreciate that. I'm nodding my head. I thought I was clear that I do support this.
Thank you. Dan, where are you? Up, down, not sure?
I do support it, but I don't think, I know we can't do that other part tonight, but I don't think, I mean, it's not a binary choice. In other words, I agree with you, Mayor, about the importance and critical nature, but I don't think that means you can't look for ways down the road to repay the sustainability fund.
And that's not what I'm saying. I'm asking for people's assistance going forward. nrotering@cityhpil.com. Send me your ideas, send me your suggestions, send me your concerns. We'll put it on the agenda and we will have that conversation. But we still have electrical aggregation. We still have closed session. And I appreciate the frustration and the nuance that needs to be put into this conversation, but it seems pretty straightforward. So I think Gita and Rob and Julie, we have the people who are in support. I also think that this entire group supports sustainability. So we will continue that conversation. And I appreciate everybody's input. Moving on to electrical aggregation opportunity, speaking of efficiencies and energy. Rob, is that you?
That is, let me just make sure so we're all on the same page. So we are going to start promoting this program tomorrow, specifically to our businesses as well as to the general public. And then we'll certainly keep you apprised as applications and we issue approval. So we'll let you know how that goes.
And it is a matching program to assist local businesses who are incurring extreme costs during this pandemic in an effort to keep them in business.
Yes, and we will issue a media release, which will summarize the purpose of the program and how retailers and restaurateurs can apply as well.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
The next initiative on the agenda is actually a very positive one. There is an opportunity that was brought before us in communication with the North Shore Electric Aggregation Consortium. Rob, our assistant manager, serves as the city's representative on that consortium. And this is an opportunity for really a win-win, and it provides a revenue stream to the city that we are recommending go into the sustainability fund for part purposes to help offset the program we just talked about.
Thanks, Manager Newkirk. So a little background on municipal aggregation. Aggregation allows municipalities to purchase alternative electricity supply on behalf of residents and small businesses that meet a certain kilowatt per hour threshold that are located within the boundaries of that municipality. The aggregation programs in Illinois really were made possible through a public act back in 2009 that paved the way to what some coin deregulation of energy supply. ComEd, on their bills, they pass through supply at the costs that they are paying for it. However, there are a number of different energy suppliers out there that also sell energy and can be a direct-to-consumer supplier. Based on the ability to generate economies of scale through joint purchasing, in 2011, the city joined the North Shore Electricity Aggregation Consortium with 7 other communities at the time. And in 2012, a referendum was passed by Highland Park voters to allow the municipality to aggregate electricity on resident and small businesses' behalf. During 2015, for the duration of 2012 to 2015, the city conducted an RFP with the NSEAC and entered into a 3-year contract, which at the end of the full contract term generated a total savings of about $36.5 million across all 8 municipalities involved in that contract. In March 2015, when that contract was up, the NSEAC went back out for a new contract, and at the time the council had voted to support a 100% renewable option if the aggregation program was to continue. However, around the time of 2015, ComEd had retired a number of high cost commodities contracts that dictated their supply values. And the NSEAC evaluated different offers that were on the market. However, our consortium, as well as most others in the state of Illinois, in the ComEd service territory, were finding that the savings that previously existed from 2012 through 2015 just weren't there. And we didn't want to put ourselves in a position to enter into a contract that may cost residents ultimately more than what they would be paying with ComEd. And the NSAC has been meeting annually. We've conducted an annual refresh of the rates, and those rates continue to remain at that level where we cannot provide a guaranteed savings versus ComEd. And they're right now, they're projected to remain in that capacity. Currently, within the electric market within municipalities, there's been coined a aggregation 1.0, which is what we had in 2012 through 2015, where customers were offered a fixed price alternative to ComEd, which generated a savings for customers on their bills. What we've been seeing in the market and what our consultant with our consortium has brought to us is a new form of aggregation called what we're coining and has become kind of coined the aggregation 2.0, where select customers are enrolled into an alternative supply with ComEd, an alternative supply agreement, which is at the ComEd rate. It will never cost more than what the ComEd rate is, including there's a PEA fluctuation that changes monthly. And the end result of the savings aggregated in total can be granted to the city or can be used to purchase renewable energy credits to help offset the greenhouse gas numbers for a municipality and ultimately allow the municipality to be deemed an EPA green power community. In the packet, I've noted that there are about 64 different communities right now that have an aggregation 2.0 program. This chart that is displayed is from a meeting in June that the NSCAC had with our consultant, at which time a presentation was given on what the potentials revenue or receive the amount of recs that we can get for our community based on such an aggregation 2.0. Back in June, our consultant estimated that if we were to proceed with this program, we would generate an estimated revenue of about $85,000, a little over $85,000 annually. Or if we chose instead to use the amount for renewable energy credits, we would cover about 29% of our community's electric use with green 100% renewable power. So within the aggregation 2.0, the process would be that the NSCAC would conduct an RFP, and right now the group is in discussions and taking the steps and speaking with respective boards about this program. And so the RFP would be conducted either late in 2020 or early 2021. By participating in the RFP, there's absolutely no obligation to approve a contract. We just get the bids. The mailer to eligible residential and small business accounts, if we were to proceed with a aggregation 2.0 program, it would be an opt-out program whereby the eligible customers would get a letter saying the municipality on your behalf under the municipal aggregation program has procured electricity. It would set forth the rates, which in this case would be at the same cost as ComEd, but allow the city to receive a grant or to receive renewable energy credits to offset our greenhouse gas totals. And a dedicated website and phone number would be also created. Now, all of this work would be done by the suppliers. It wouldn't be an initiative or work that would be done by city staff. A program would have no cost to the city. The length of contract would be determined based on negotiations from the RFP. We would manage the program within the city manager's office. Specifically, our GRC core member would handle any sort of customer inquiries from the public. And ultimately, what's beneficial about this program is the city may elect either to accept renewable energy credits or to accept the grant amount from the supplier. And that grant amount can be used for whatever purpose. And as City Manager Newkirk indicated, we're recommending that that be contributed to the Sustainability Fund. Now, I'd also like to note that each year we can come back and revisit whether we'd like to accept the grant amount for that year or if we would like to get renewable energy credits. So if in a future year we determine that we would like to focus on reducing our greenhouse gas by using those RECs, we can do so, and that's at the council's prerogative. So as far as next steps for aggregation 2.0, there's a requirement that the plans of operation and governance be amended because at the time that the POGO, as we call it, was created back in 2012, this type of aggregation program wasn't contemplated or didn't exist. And so it's not enumerated specifically in the POGO. Under the Illinois Power Agency Act, in order to amend the POGO, the city would have to go through a public hearing, two public hearings, after which the adoption of the POGO with the new aggregation 2.0 concept can proceed. After adoption of the POGO and those communities that choose to move forward with this, I believe right now, as of today, Glencoe has already adopted the amended POGO. The other communities are having their discussions. Collectively, those who want to participate would proceed with the RFP. Thereafter, we'd select a vendor and go through contract negotiations. And at that point, notification would go out to residents and the program would commence. So the questions for the council are whether or not to proceed with this type of aggregation program with the NSCAC And if so, would the council prefer to receive the recs or to receive revenue? Now, in the agenda packet, I did note that the revenue that we're expecting was about $75,000, which is a bit conservative. Based on the analysis that was done by our consultant, we could be looking at about $85,400 per year on an annual basis over multiple years. And so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent presentation. Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. Any questions or comments or opinions? Councilwoman Stone.
I think this is great, Rob. Excellent work finding this opportunity. Of course, I'd like to buy the Rex, but we need the money. So I think that's probably where everyone else is going to end up. I'm glad I had asked earlier in the day how this will work with the community solar program that we just approved. And I was really pleased to hear that this will be complementary to that. So I'm in favor of going ahead and moving forward with this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nodding heads? No? Yes? Michelle, you're not moving, but I'm going to assume you're a yes. Okay. And everyone's okay with revenue versus Rex? Yes. Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
So then we'll have a public hearing. So 2 consecutive public hearings. We'll have to publish notification in the paper, but we'll begin that process based on the direction tonight. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm now seeking a motion to go into closed session.
Mayor, a motion to go into closed session to discuss employment matters, purchase or lease of property, and approval of closed session minutes pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2CC 1, 5, and 21 respectively.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilwoman Stone,
Aye.
Councilman Kaufman,
Aye.
Councilman Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilman Noble,
Aye.
Councilman Holloman,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays. We'll go into closed session. Thank you.